All right. So you're not going to get any Wichita State puns from me today. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. All right, let's get into these mid-majors who have lost in their conference tournaments. You got Wichita State losing in the semifinals of the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament to Northern Iowa. You have Valparaiso losing in the Horizon League semifinals to Green Bay. And you had Monmouth, my beloved Monmouth Hawks, losing in the final last night to Iona. So, what are they going to do with these three teams? I am very, very, very curious to see what they do, to see what this committee does with, these schools. I think Valpo's out of the picture. I don't think they really have a chance at getting an at-large bid. But Wichita State is an interesting discussion because on paper, the Shockers don't really have the resume of an NCAA tournament team. They're 1-3 against the top 50 of the RPI, just 4-7 against the top 100. They didn't look good in St. Louis, not at all. They struggled in the quarterfinals against Loyola of Chicago and obviously lost in the semis to eventual NBC champion Northern Iowa. Their best win was against Utah at home. Now, this is where we get to the injuries, because Wichita State was without point guard Fred VanVleet for the entire Advocare Invitational back in November, where it dropped all three of its games to USC, Iowa, and Alabama. With a healthy VanVleet, there's no doubt in my mind the Shockers would have won 2 of those games, maybe even all 3. And they also didn't get sharpshooter Connor Frankamp until mid-season. So, I have a hard time believing that they're not going to make the field. I really do. I do think that they might get stuck in Dayton, but to me, that's what the playing games are for. It's for teams like Wichita State that are good enough to be in the NCAA tournament, but because they're in a bad conference, they don't get a chance to pile up the wins. So, again, I just don't see it happening. The same holds true for Monmouth, which, like I referenced, lost in the MAC final to Iona on Monday night. The Hawks went 2-2 against the top 50 of the RPI, 4-4 against the top 100. They have wins over high-profile schools such as Notre Dame, USC, Georgetown, and UCLA. They have 13 road wins, 17 victories total on the road and neutral floors. What hurts them, though, is the 3 losses to teams outside the top 200. Those are killers. But in my opinion, I don't think you can leave a team like this out. You just can't. They're 27-7. They've done everything that you can ask them to do. They've scheduled brutally tough out of non-conference, and they won games. They've proven that they're worthy. Now, they haven't really played well down the stretch. They've had some struggles. You had a game against Rider where, they got bailed out in the end. They stormed back from like 11-point deficit in the last 4 minutes. Had the loss to Iona, obviously, last night as well. But this is a tournament team. I don't care. They're in. And it'd be funny, though, if it's Wichita State versus Monmouth in a play-in game in Dayton. Now, the other big school to go down, like I said, was Valpo. While the Crusaders do have a road win at Oregon State on the resume, there's just not much else. And unfortunately, I don't see them making the field. So it's a shame because I think this is a good team. I think this is a solid team. It's a team that can make a run to the Sweet 16. There's no doubt in my mind. And the other thing that sucks is we don't even get to see Oakland in the final tonight. It stinks. It stinks. No Mr. Felder. Man, that guy puts on a show. It's a shame. All right. So, as for the rest of the conference tournaments, 2 conferences in particular, when referencing bubble teams, you got the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, and the Atlantic 10. In the American, Temple, Cincinnati, UConn, Tulsa, they'll be fighting for their NCAA tournament lives. Cincinnati and UConn will meet in the quarterfinals in what possibly might be a play-in game for the big dance. The Bearcats might be okay if they lose, but obviously he can't really lose that game either. I don't think the Huskies will make it though with a loss. They're starting to free fall bad right now. As for the Owls, I think they might get in if they reach the finals of the tournament because that would mean that you can play Cincinnati or UConn in the semis, and that would possibly be a top 50 RPI win. And if it's not a top 50, that RPI will be in the 50s, so it's really not too far off. Tulsa is the school that really got the bad luck of the draw because they're not going to be able to pile up marquee wins. They have Houston on its side of the bracket. Houston is like in the 70s of the RPI. So I think Tulsa is going to have to win the tournament to get in. While I believe Dayton and St. Joe's will most likely have, resumes good enough to make it into the field of 68, I'm not so sure about St. Bonaventure and VCU, and there's the potential that they might meet in the Atlantic 10 semifinals. So the winner of that game, definitely in. The loser of that game, they'll be sweating it out on Selection Sunday. The ACC tournament has a quarterfinal showdown between Pittsburgh and Syracuse on Wednesday. Obviously, huge NCAA tournament ramifications there. The loser of that game might not hear its name called on Selection Sunday. In the Big Ten, the big team to watch there is Michigan. Although the Wolverines are just 3-11 against the top 100 of the RPI, they don't have any bad losses. And barring a loss to Northwestern, Michigan will have a showdown against Indiana in the quarterfinals. A win against the Hoosiers might get them to Dayton, and a trip to the Ben Finals will probably get them into the big dance. In the Pac-12, as long as USC and Oregon State don't suffer bad losses to UCLA and Arizona State, respectively, I think they'll both be fine. Oregon State, however, might need a win against Cal in the semis to assure a spot. In the SEC, Vanderbilt needs to make sure it doesn't lose to either Tennessee or Auburn in its opening game. In the quarterfinals, a matchup against LSU awaits, and even beating the Tigers might not be enough. But if the Commodores can get to the finals with a win over Texas A&M in the semis, you can book them into the field of 68. So, that's it for this video. I will have 2 more bracketology videos. I will have one on Friday afternoon, and I'm going to try to get one right before Selection Sunday. So, a couple hours before the bracket comes out, so I can have a final bracket to post for you guys to look at. So, that's it for this one. I'm out of here. Championship week is in full swing, and it's awesome. I love it. Take care.